Hi, Jesse.
Hi, Allison. Give me just a second. I'm coming in on
Yeah.
the
Okay.
other one here. There we go.
I wanted to do something.
Hello.
Hello. I was listening to one of your favorite people. It's an older lecture because it was, from what I can gather, it was when Steve Jobs was still alive. But it's Fritz's talk on leadership. So the thing that that got me, I mean, there are a few things there that I've got to go and listen to again. But where I was where he's talking about the dynamic between 2 points, which is a tension that needs to be resolved. And he says that there's never a gap. So I was thinking about this, and I thought my conclusion to it is that it's interesting how a word can get applied in different situations and maybe mean different things, but then maybe I don't, maybe that's wrong. So that got me thinking, because you know how I always refer to looking for the gap. And that comes from meditation training. So then I think, maybe there's another word that the English language didn't have the exact word for what they mean and what they talk about. Because it's the same thing. I imagine that, that's my understanding at this point. So the whole reason for looking for the gap in meditation is to look for the gap between the experience and the observation. So the minute you do that, you know that you are going to a different level. And that's good.
Mm-hmm.
So when he talks about the tension, it's a creative tension that, that he's encouraging. And it's between 2 points. He also is talking about using that, working with it. And in meditation, you're also working with the gap. It's to your advantage. But he was also trying to make the point, to emphasize that there's never nothing. And usually people associate the word gap with that there's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting for me, because it's again about looking at the structure of things. And I know that was when I first heard Chris talk about structure and talk about creative as opposed to problem solving, I recognize that in the philosophy of yoga, how can I say this? The philosophy structure is a creative structure. It's not a problem solving structure.
And I think in that is to acknowledge what we care about is the only thing that will have structure too. Because there's so much that doesn't, right? It's like so much that may not even be in the awareness of it in the moment. But I think that's part of the gap too, right? Part of the gap that's there. It's all the other stuff that's just not in the awareness of the moment. That's between the two structures. That could be complex structures. So as Fritz says, there is no gap between them. That's where I connect to the point that it doesn't matter or don't care for it or unaware of it. I can see from tension. That's, so like is there ever any gap in tension?
Yeah, that's that's exactly the point that he was making, and there isn't.
Yeah, from that. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah. And the point then becomes, well, is the tension useful? Is it working? Is it beneficial? And if it isn't, then so the awareness is then how to change it.
Yes. This stuff is deep.
Yeah, and then it's like we're programs, which we are, but then like computers to be able to just edit one line of code and it's resolved.
Oy.
Or easy for someone and not so easy for someone else.
Exactly. I mean, so as you always say, everything has got a structure. So if we really want to know how to work with AI, we need to know how to work in a creative structure, to be able to recognize it as opposed to a problem-solving structure. But then the big question also is, what kind of a structure has it been modeled on?
Yeah, that's the big one. Or related to. So it's either or. Both, right? It's like, which one is it based on? And then how am I organizing with it?
Yes.
Yeah. And let's see, would AI know the difference yet?
I don't think so. Not from my tiny bit of experience with it. I asked it some questions, health related. I've got more to answer to be sure, but it doesn't bode well for me at this point in terms of what I was hoping for. But I mean, it'll change quickly, but we'll see.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think Chat GPT has the connection to the internet to like for that capability either.
Mm.
So part of, and then of course, like how Mo says, it's going to model how we model it, how we ask it, how we train it, how it interacts with us, and in that would see patterns that we couldn't see. But then also it's like this building its own blind patterns.
Yes. So here's the thing, Jess. So or the parallels that I'm making now is that, so Fritz talks about how all corporations at one point were using the Myers-Briggs to determine personality, and then they determine what kind of personality needs to go into what position. And they never look at the underlying structure of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
And his conclusion was it's got nothing to do with personality at all.
Mm-hmm.
So then
Right.
yeah, and I get that. I do get that. But then my question is, but a personality also has a structure which can be changed. So if you put it in the right structure, then the structure of the personality can get changed.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's big.
It's two different perspectives. It's, and one of them says as you are is fine. Or one of them says like there's the choice, and meaning from the industry's standpoint, it's like my structure's fine. I can choose which structure to plug in from the personality. So that person's fine, that person isn't.
Yes, but there's an outcome to that. There's a result to that, and it's usually not good.
Because it's not that individual choice that really matters, right? It's the underlying structure, as Fritz would say.
Yes.
It's the permanent one. It's the fixed one that most of the time we're blind to. It's the one that we're blind to.
So could we say that if you work with AI in a creative structure, it can serve you? And if you aren't aware of structure and you're in a problem-solving structure, it will still serve you in the short term. Not sure what it will do in the long term. Right?
I think it's as people, right, use it and come up with new things, which is what they will do, right? It's like come up with new things. They'll grant it certain. I think at the end of the day, if they're granting it the power over them, then it's the same structure as anyone else.
Yes. Yes.
Now, even if it has good ideas, right, comes up with new things. I mean, how's that any different than? And they still have to execute on which ones. And so, yes, incrementally better.
God, it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's structure is not easy, not simple, and that's why it's so difficult to see.
Yeah. And he did say that too. But once you see it, it's a lifesaver.
yeah, it's a better opportunity, a better chance.
Yeah. So here's the thing. For me, my belief is that life is well, there's enough evidence for it. Life itself is a creative structure. If it was a problem-solving structure, I don't think we would ever have been created as, as a species. Maybe, maybe not. But I think that's why I immediately recognized, if that's the right word, but that's why I see yoga philosophy as being basically based in a creative structure, because it's based in understanding energy and the potential of the energy residing in the body.
Which I come to see as the creative structure, right? It's the energy. We have the energy. It is what is in front of us is what matters.
Yes. Yes, always, right.
Which that to me connects into the nature.
Really?
Which then connects into me is like, well, why focus so much on the past?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
And if we don't, then others will. And then there's a difference. There becomes a tension between the two. That tension will resolve.
One way or the other, right? It either gets resolved with a gathering or people drop away. They go and do their own gathering in a problem solving, which always has got emphasis on the past.
Yeah. And the other is that is where it is. What's next?
Yeah.
And in that creates the gap. Because you should be focused on the past as if that was that, which it was, right? It was that situation. And then the other, it's like now the creator's sitting in the, well, what do we do about it? What's next? And then we make up stories to justify either of them.
Either of which?
Position.
Okay.
Because our position is always right.
Yes. Unless we can become a drone and take that 40,000 foot view.
Yeah. And even even saying like all of it is in the present, right? And it is the only thing we can do is like move forward. That is still that 40,000 foot drone from a position that says that I say is right, is the effective way to move forward, or how I will move forward with it, right?
Mm.
As much as we could wish we could change anything in the past. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then it's like, also, I don't think that that is honored either.
What is on it? The wish or the past? Or what it was?
Yeah. It's from the point of view of, well, that was the choice, right? That was the choice in the moment. And then that means XYZ.
Mm. Mm.
Again, focusing on the past, justifying the past.
Mm. I know. That's changed a lot for me, because of you. There's a sense of freedom and resolution.
There is. That's the only way to it.
Yeah.
And yet we'll come up with other ways we think we'll get out of it. And in all reality, it's just the same pattern playing again.
Yeah.
Yet it's us blaming someone else's pattern.
Attributing it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Reflection's a bitch. And that goes both ways. Geez, I mean, but it never can be our reflection. That's the point that I'm working to get at, is it's never our reflection. That's a powerless, that's a victim.
Mm.
And sometimes it just, it feels like, oh, it doesn't care, but it's not that at all. It's, but someone could say, oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't care about that. It's like, no, more completely not that.
That's right.
That's you assuming, or you inferring. That's the other person inferring.
Yeah.
From their perspective, from their point of view, from the way that it is, which is the only thing that tells us what's really there.
Yeah. I think there's space for a bridge with that, though.
Mm.
Through conversation, through sharing of how you see it and what you see and what you do. I mean, I go back to when there was that tension between building the group in conscious education and them not wanting it. And I asked you the one day, I said to you, why do you want to give this to them? And your answer floored me completely. I was so taken aback. And you said, how else do you honor somebody who's given you something that has saved your life? Or how better do you honor it than by improving on their model? And it was the least, I hadn't expected that at all. It was so humbling and shocking to me at the same time. it was, and then I understood. But until then, I couldn't understand what you were trying to do. So that was the bridge for me to be able to see what it was that you were doing. And you're 100% right, but my small brain had never gone that far. I couldn't see that until you said it, described it, spoke to it.
Yeah, that's to the point we only experience ourselves.
Yes, exactly.
How it is, how I would react, how I would conform, how it affects me, as rather than the empathy compartment of others, right? To put myself, let me walk in your shoes. And that's the communication. That's the bridge. Is like, well, these are my shoes.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly it. I just have to switch my Wi-Fi and just hold on a second.
Here's my shoes.
And that's why, with that NLP notion of behavior being the biggest, is it the biggest or the best or
highest form of communication?
Highest form of communication. But talking is behaving.
Mm-hmm.
People often think that behaving is just in terms of how you, what you do. And I don't know.
Your choice was how it worked, the result, the outcome. It's always the hindsight, right? Hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
There's always something that leads up to that choice that we step over, we ignore, we blame, we judge, we criticize, as if at the moment as someone else would say something different, do something different, change something different. And if you had this point of view, you would choose this too. You're right.
That's right. Yeah. I was thinking about him saying, Robert Fritz was saying, he was talking about clients that he'd consulted with corporations, and he said in the beginning when he started out working with his other two colleagues, he was the back boy kind of thing, the guy that brought coffee to everybody. But he can remember sitting there watching and thinking to himself, he in his field of work with musicians, because that's where he was working, he expected craziness, but he didn't expect it in corporations because of how narrow and unseeing, people were about where they were heading and about their own structure.
Who said that?
Fritz.
Fritz.
Yeah. And I mean, from being kind of one step away, was living with Bruce. I think you get that stuck structure in every field, even in the creative field, or the fields of self-expression. And there are musicians that are very explorative, and there are others that stay very much in the safe lane. And it's too uncomfortable for them to explore. I found that interesting too, just reflecting on that when you listening to Fritz this morning. I mean, I think people that are expressive and create things with their self-expression I certainly lean more towards a creative structure. There's no doubt about it. But even there, it's not a given.
No, that's it's like we think it'll be there all the time, and what will be there all the time is the past and
Yes.
the way it's been, and it's always around the current improvements, right? And the current improvements aren't always, I mean, it's so much more energy to the past than there is to the future, to the new. And
the secret lies in the now.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's very much what that refrain from that one poem that I love so much. But I mean, I always just remember the one verse of it. And it's an old poem, and I know I mentioned it before, is that thing about we all dance around in a circle and suppose, and the secret sits in the middle and knows. And the secret is the now. That's the sustainable point of structure, of a creative structure.
Mm. it is in allowing that, setting in that, and learning. It's all about the curiosity of what that is. Fuck, I get tired of lessons though. How about you?
Oh God, we all do, Jess. So sometimes
Unless there are none to get, right? Unless there are none to get. I mean,
yeah.
is that better? I don't know. It's sure easier. Let's put it that way. Being the victim is a lot easier.
But it feels so shitty.
Both feel shitty at times, huh?
Yes. But I must say, I far prefer being empowered even when I'm confused than feeling disempowered. And that's when we take the victim.
Yeah.
So I noticed something again that was different for me in listening with a client today. So being able to extricate herself, I think, finally, from a situation that was bad. And so I kind of recognized the difference in my listening and the difference in what I pulled out and shared with her. And what I was listening for was the resonance around her being able to be in her vulnerability, which at this point is probably is not really going to show very much, because if you've had to pull yourself out of it, you've had to put your defenses up to get out. So I recognize that, but that's what I was listening for. And obviously there was a focus on everything that the partner had done, which was all true, but that didn't matter, right? And I could be clear. I had more clarity in what was important to encapsulate in terms of a focus for her, because that's what she'd asked for. You know, what do I need to pay attention to? Which was great, because then that gave me permission So it was just, it was interesting. There was a different feel for me. I was, kind of reflecting on what I would have maybe and probably paid attention to more before, would have just been to be supportive to her in the state that she was in. But because she'd asked the question, I could push, I could throw the ball a little bit further for her. And still keep it in reflecting back what I was hearing and getting from what she was processing as she was talking, and kind of course correct. That's the word I'm looking for. And she's going to vacillate with it, but she's heard it. And I think it will stick. There's less attachment for me in terms of whether in terms of the timing for people. I think that's what it is. There's less of a sense of urgency. Whereas before there was an urgency. I might not have expressed it, but I certainly experienced it. And carried it. So I appreciated that. Because I think it will serve her better.
Less pressure on you, on the situation. And and when there's less pressure, it's like it's free to come out what needs to come out in it. And of course nature of it is it good enough? Is it enough?
Yeah.
And when it isn't, the cascades of that.
Yeah. It's so interesting, that sense of responsibility, because it's so important. But what I also realized not all that long ago was that there's a difference between being responsible for yourself and feeling responsible for somebody else. That's the first one. But the other is that term of being engaged. As long as you're engaged in life, you're being responsible. And that has a different charge to it, that word.
Which word?
Responsibility as opposed to engagement. And then you think about Mo's term again, how do you want to spend your heartbeats? And that's engagement. And it's a sense of responsibility. It's how you honor the gifts that you were given.
Wrapped into that is obligation. responsibility, obligation, or engagement. There's versions of that.
That's right.
Yes, and what's next?
Hmm.
Engagement, participation, play in, which is not a what could be different, what could have changed, what could be, what should be, what would be, because it is, just is. Well, I thank you for today.
You're welcome, Jess. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. I look forward to our next one.
Me too.
Okay. Thanks,
Have a-
Allison.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye.